Good evening and welcome back to the second episode of Whiskey and Watches with Nick. I'm Nick. This is the whiskey. This is the watch. Wrist check tonight is my Christopher Ward C60 Elite, which I swear I'll review once I figure out how to edit on Google, on YouTube. Tonight we are reviewing a fantastic whiskey. We're continuing our time in Islay, and we're just taking a couple mile walk down the road from Bunnahabhain to Caol Ila. Caol Ila is, I think by volume, the largest distillery on Islay, and was bought by Diageo, I want to say in the 70s, maybe early 80s during the Scotch crisis. For many years, Caol Ila was relegated to a blending whiskey, at which it excels, by the way, in case you're wondering. Caol Ila, along with Diageo stablemates Lagavulin and Talisker, provide the smoke and maritime notes in arguably the most famous whiskey in the history of the world, Johnnie Walker Black. And if I had to wager, I'd say that it's Caol Ila, at least in some quantity, that is providing the smoke in what I think is the best value whiskey, period, J&B. Not a fancy one, but a great one. But we are not reviewing Johnnie Walker or J&B tonight. We are in single malt territory tonight. We are reviewing Caol Ila 12. It is an 12-year age statement. It's bottled at 43%. And it's just really a superb whiskey. No color added. It has that lovely kind of straw, hay, just oily color. And I say it's an oily color because you just think it's going to have a slightly oily aroma on the nose, and it doesn't disappoint. On the nose, we get obviously plenty of smoke. Not a super strong smoke. Not a meat or savory smoke. I would call it a very mildly ashy smoke. Definitely has that smoky phenolic note leading on the nose, followed by the oiliness that was promised by the appearance. Almost kind of like maybe a, I don't know, if I said tar but meant it in a good way, would that make sense? And it's balanced by a really nice sweetness. It's a vanilla citrus sweetness that we get on so many scotches and on so many Islay scotches, balancing out the maritime and the influences and the smoke that we get on these whiskeys. More phenols. A bit more citrus, vanilla. Definitely feeling some peat on the palate. Like an herbal, vegetal peat, which I guess makes sense. Let's see what else is there. A little bit of that vanilla that was on the nose is coming through. And then there's a peppery, not a pungent black pepper, but it's like a little bit of sharpness, like a white pepper on it. And just kind of a general sweetness. I don't know if we would call it like a toffee or caramel sweetness. I think either term would be appropriate. I think most drinkers would probably experience it somewhere along those lines. fantastic body. The 43% really hits just right. It doesn't feel too spirity, doesn't burn. It has that gentleness and that smoothness that we would expect from a 12-year aged whiskey, but it's still mouth-filling. Just looking at the glass, I can see it coating the inside of my Glencairn here. Again, there's just something oily about this, and I just mean that as the highest praise because it's just such a fantastic whiskey. I'm going to add water to it in a moment, very tiny amount because it really doesn't need a lot. It's, again, not harsh, it's not burning. Now I'm getting a little bit of an herbal note. And a little bit more mild tar in the nose. It's just really beautiful. More vegetally herby peat on the finish. Let's do a single drop of water here and see if we open up any smoke aroma or sweet aroma on the nose. Yeah, that was just the right amount to open the nose up some more. Smoke is opened up. It's more prominent. It's not overbearing at all. Although I should note that I am down toward the tail end of this bottle. I remember very clearly the neck pour from this bottle. The ash was pronounced. I enjoyed it, but someone who wasn't madly in love with smoky whiskey aromas would not have enjoyed that. They would have found it, at best, a bracing experience. Now it's so mellowed out, being so far down toward the end of the bottle. But actually, I was a little disappointed in how mild it was initially on the aroma on tonight's tasting. And that water just perked up the smoke just enough. Really not changing it very much on the palate. Caol Ila is definitely not what I would consider an introductory whiskey. Certainly, I wouldn't even consider it an introductory Scotch, and I wouldn't even consider it an introductory Islay. For an introductory Scotch, of course, I think you couldn't go wrong with any of the blends. They give you an excellent sense of what Scotch tastes like because, well, they contain multitudes and they do so affordably. I mean, here in the northwestern United States where I live, I can pick up, a bottle of Dewar's White for $18 or $19, a bottle of Cuddy for $18, and I think I would be paying a whopping $21 for a bottle of J&B, which is just my go-to whiskeys. And even Johnny Black comes in at $40, with Johnny Black Double coming in at $45. So the blends are a great place to start. They're approachable. I'm going to cover them in depth individually and also in comparative tastings in some future videos because I really like blends. I think blended whiskey is fun. I enjoy it. I don't think it's a cheap expression of whiskey, and 90% of all Scotch whiskey winds up in a blend, and I think that should tell us something about the value of blends. Single malts are just so engaging because they have so much character, and because that character can change between batches just as it can with good bourbon here in the US, or non-bourbon whiskey here in the US. Where was I going with that? So anyways, not an introductory whiskey, not by a long shot, but for someone who's experienced a little smoke, whether on a J&B or a Johnny Double Black, or even on another Islay. Maybe they've had a Lagavulin and they thought, hey, this is fantastic. Or you've had Port Charlotte peated, and you thought, this is fantastic, and how could you not? That's another great whiskey. This would be a wonderful next step. It really would. And it's so interesting that this is just made a couple miles away from Bunnahabhain. They are completely different whiskeys. The Bunnahabhain, of course, as I mentioned in my last review, was just sherry. It was almost a sherry bomb and really required water to open it up and chill that puttyish kind of sherry smell out. This is not sherryish at all. It's ashy, it's smoky, it has, noticeable phenolic character to it. And really, in my opinion, on a pour toward the end of the bottle, doesn't require any water. If you're doing a neck pour or a shoulder pour, I would have the water handy on this one. I think it really did benefit from water, higher up in the bottle. Anyway, folks, not a lot more to say. Smoke, phenol, peat, herby, vegetal, fun, peat, wonderful, nice balancing vanilla, citrusy sweetness, and a beautiful, oily, mouth-filling body. A fantastic whiskey and a fantastic way to go a little deeper into Islay. As always, if you made it this far, and I know I ran on today, so I'm sorry. If you made it this far, I really appreciate your time and your interest. And I'll be back with more and more whiskey and even eventually some watches here pretty soon. Thanks. Take care. Be well. Drink whiskey. Love watches. I'll see you next time.